Hey, good afternoon or good morning, wherever you may be. Welcome to another session of Gateless Live. I'm Dave Lopshire with Guaranteed Rate, and we are excited that you are here today. We're going to talk about the inventory issue across the country. We're going to talk about some really innovative ways that you can deal with inventory, but also some really innovative ways that you can actually expand your business. Look for opportunities within the listings that you already have. Look for opportunities with some listings that you're struggling with because maybe they're not performing to their highest expectation. So that's our topic today, and our topic is going to really help you understand how you can expand your business as we're going into those winter months, which is going to be very important for those of us in the cold weather states. So with us today is Dave Willman. Dave is in Salisbury, Maryland. He's part of in fact, he is the Maryland Home Buyers Network. So David, welcome to Gateless Live. We're excited that you're here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's talk first about you being a real estate agent. Tell me a little bit about you. Tell me about you and your business and how things have gone.
I've been in the business 29 years, done over 220 million in buyer business over that period of time. Always kind of gravitated towards working with buyers, representing buyers for the whole duration. So based on that, I get into a lot of different variations of different strategies and things to do. But this renovation phase has really helped my business a lot. It's probably at least 60% of my business right now. And it opens doors that would ordinarily be closed to people.
So let's talk about your business. A lot of agents, you're really out of the box because everybody wants to be a listing agent, but you've chosen a different path. What were your thought process there in focusing more with buyers?
I'm not sure why I did what I did. I've just always kind of gravitated towards buyers. I've come from a finance background, and the loan side of things is something that I've always been comfortable with. So I found that if I market the properties from a finance standpoint, how much down payment, what the payment is, I've been pretty successful at being able to accumulate a lot of sales that way. So I like the finance side of the buyer business.
I like that. Being with Guaranteed Rate, you're talking my language, so I really like that. As you look at your business, and let's go back to early on, 29 or 28 or 27 years ago as you were building your business. For somebody that's tuned in today, talk about how you built your foundation. I know you got successful very quickly, and so let's talk about some of the things that you did early on in your career to really accelerate to where you are now.
Early on, I was a real estate investor as well as a real estate agent. So I looked at things from both sides, the investor side, the buyer's agent side. When I started out, the market was tough to be a listing agent anyway. Interest rates were high. And if you represented a seller, you'd get a lot of phone calls from the seller. When's my house going to sell? When's my house going to sell? As a result of that, I'd rather be on the other side of the equation. And that is, how can we find a great deal for Mr. Buyer that I'm representing here? So I kind of went in that direction for that reason, and became comfortable with it, was able to put together programs that would get me over 100 buyer sides a year, and just never really left it. I do a little bit of listing, but it's mostly for past customers or current customers where they need to sell a home in order to buy another one. And because my systems are in place to represent buyers, at any given time, I may have anywhere from 135 to 170 buyers in my pipeline. And so with that amount of pipeline business in place, when I do take a listing, about 82% of the time I end up selling it myself. So that's kind of the way it's unfolded over the years.
That makes a lot of sense. But so if you look at when you talked about building your business 26 years ago, the basics of the business has changed, but now there's a lot of technology involved. But what I like about you is you're still taking that old school approach. So talk about how you're working with buyers, how you keep that many buyers in a pipeline.
Well, I'm a Realtor.com agent, a Zillow agent, Trulia agent. I kind of came into the technology piece in the last couple of years, kicking and screaming. I've got a son who's a tech wizard kind of guy, and he's been beating me up for years, telling me I've got to tie into the internet and capture the internet. And of course, being old school, it took me a while to adopt that. But now I am, because of the the Realtor.com, the Zillow stuff, I do get a tremendous amount of leads that way as well. On top of that, yeah, I've always done old school marketing, bandit signs and things, advertising the finance side of real estate, generating business from drive-by traffic as well.
I like that approach, man. There's nothing better than knocking on doors still. I think it works today and it's always going to work. So, all right, let's get into renovation now. So for those of you that are joining us today, and we talked about what you can do with your inventory. What our focus is you think about when somebody walks into a builder, they're looking at new construction. They can order the kind of kitchen cabinets they want. They can order the appliances. They can order what kind of paint they want on the, on the walls. They can order whether they want a 1-car or a 2-car or a 3-car garage. They can order all of the, the landscaping. What renovation lending does is that allows you to do that with existing inventory. So, David, let's talk about what you're doing. I mean, you've adopted renovation lending. Why'd you make the decision to go in and do renovation properties? What led you down this path?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. One reason is if you look across the country, there's still a lot of vacant homes. And if I'm a realtor representing the buyer's best interest, I'm always looking at those foreclosed homes. The downside to the foreclosed home is they pretty much all need work. So if I'm representing the buyer, I can show them how to purchase a home in a neighborhood 20 or 30% below what the other homes are selling for. And I have in my toolbox the tool of the renovation loan, whereby I can show them the house next door that's all fixed up. Then I can take them to the house that's a foreclosure needing work. And I can say, look, it's going to look like this when it's done. You can customize it yourself. Let's call Sherry and do the renovation loan. And that's really helped a lot.
Got it. And how did you find this? I mean, because renovation to us, very important. We do a lot of renovation loans here. It's a big part of our business. But not every agent really kind of adapts this or adopts it or wraps their arms around it. How did you find this and how did you turn it into such a success for you?
Basically, I've always had a knack for the finance side of things. So I quickly learned that if you're going to buy a fixer-upper, you got a couple choices. You can, hopefully it's in good enough shape that you can do a standard loan to start with, but then what are you going to do after you get in the house? You're going to have to come out of your own pocket for renovations, or you're going to have to max out credit cards. And if you look at the interest rates on the credit cards, it doesn't make sense to do that. So I've always explored different options, and the reno option is just a natural to take that home and make it the way you want it and be able to roll the repair costs into the loan. So you're not coming out of your own pocket for the money to fix it up, and you can make it the way you want it.
Yeah, if you guys, if you're searching the MLS and you see something, I love those terms, fixer-upper or a handyman special, that's the key indicator right there that this is a property that is begging for a renovation loan, right, David?
Absolutely. I do a lot of keyword searches that way. Look for fixer-uppers or mold or whatever keywords you want to put in there.
You also talked about how you use it when you have appraisal challenges. Get a home inspection or appraisal, and it just doesn't meet what what it should, and you really are fighting the battle. How do you use renovation approach to fight those?
Well, typically, if you're in a neighborhood that is pretty similarly priced from one unit to the next, at that point, you're at the mercy of whoever the appraiser ends up being in the transaction. However, if you're doing a renovation loan, that appraiser's handed a list of repairs to be done. And I find it's a lot more subjective at that point. It's very seldom do I have an under appraisal when the appraiser looks at the contractor list. It's pretty much a natural that you get the appraised value, the to be determined appraised value without any objections. You just don't run into under appraisals on these renos.
And the thing about renovation lending is that the renovation loan is based on the as improved value. So David's talking about the fact that you can come in and the buyers can look at the house and they look next door and they see what their house is really in great shape. And then they look at this house and they go, I love that sales approach, David, when you say, look, this house can look like that house. And we're going to be able to put you in a system that allows you to borrow against what that house will appraise at later on down the road.
Absolutely.
Got it. All right. You talked about vacant homes, foreclosures, bank homes. You know, obviously several years ago when we were, you know, doing all of those types of properties, they were abundant, and that was a focus of a lot of the business. Are they still out there? Are you still able to find, you know, those opportunities?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In our county area right now, I'm sure there's still at least 15 or 20% of the properties that are in some form of foreclosure, short sale, whatever, distressed sale situation. As a caveat to that, HUD in particular is a gold mine right now, because if you purchase a HUD foreclosed home, HUD's got a special incentive saying that if you use a reno loan to do it, they reduce the normal down payment to $100. So you can get an FHA 203K renovation loan with a $100 down payment if you're buying a HUD foreclosed home. And that just makes it a natural. Even if the house is in good shape, there's always things that the buyer wants to do to the house: new paint, new countertops, new carpet, whatever. So you might as well at that point do the renovation loan to take advantage of the $100 down payment, as opposed to doing a standard FHA 203B would be 3.5% down. So it's really a gold mine for the agents that are understanding it.
And you know, with a renovation loan, okay, just to kind of put that into perspective for you, there's a lot of things you can do with a renovation loan. You can even add a bedroom, you can even add a bathroom. You can, you know, do the things that we were talking about with paint. You can do, you know, you can replace the windows. You can put on a new roof. I mean, have you run into much, David, where you haven't been able to take that house to the level that the buyers want to take it?
No, I've never run into any problems doing that. It's always worked out fine. You know, whatever they want to do, whether it's a minor cosmetic improvement or if they want to put an addition on or something more difficult to accomplish. There's different, you know, there's the easy version of the renovation loan, Easy K, and then there's a full scale, bigger type version that would involve more repairs. The majority of the buyers I work with have done what's called the Easy K, or the amount of renovations under 31,000.
Right.
And not a whole lot to it, not a lot of scrutiny, pretty straightforward.
It's a really great approach. Now, there's some construction involved here. And I know that there's a myth, and I'm going to say it as a myth, that, you know, doing a renovation loan not only takes forever, it's hard to get, it's hard to get done. Then you have to fight with the contractors. You have to get everything done. It's a royal pain in the you know what. But that's a myth, right? You've been able to come up with some ways to make sure that you're managing that process.
Yes, I find that I work with Sherry. She's the renovation guru. We can get our loans closed in 45 days without any problem. I will say that the contractor piece is the most difficult piece of the puzzle. So the way to do it is to have the contractor lined up in advance, know who your contractors are. You get good contractors that understand the process. You get them out there in the beginning stages, and everything else is easy after that. So I would really suggest that the realtors that are going to do this program start looking for their contractors now, get their licensing, their insurance stuff into the lender ahead of time. And then when you do find the right house, your contractor will be ready to go and set up. And if that happens, then 45 days is a non-issue to close it.
So to get a contractor approved to do a renovation loan, there's a couple of things that have to occur. Just give you a little schooling here. So we have to look at their license, we have to look at their bonding, we have to look at all of those things. We have to make sure that they're a legitimate business. We got to make sure that they have a history of providing good service. There's some certification that's involved, but you only have to do that once. And so if you find the contractor that David's talking about, and you find the contractor that you want to work with, you get them through the process of getting them approved with your renovation lender. Hopefully that's guaranteed rate. And that you only have to do that once. But then you can go back to them over and over and over. And I've actually seen where you've brought the contractor into the process to be able to talk with the client. So how do you do that? How do you make sure that the clients are designing and thinking and doing the things that they need to do to their house?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the first step. What we do, we find the house. I'm showing the house before we even write the contract. We bring the contractor in, have them meet with the buyer. The buyer then takes them around the house, gets an idea of what they want to have done, and get that going right away. And when we do it that way, the contractors know they've got to put the estimates together, and the jump start we get with the contractors is a crucial piece of the puzzle. What I'll also say is it really helps the contractor. Contractors, by and large, live in a world of I'm going to do a contracting job, but where's my next contracting job after this? By feeding a pipeline of business like this to the contractor, it really smooths out their peaks and valleys of business as well. So it's a big plus for the contractors. And the contractors that understand that, they're looking forward to doing this 203K renovation loans. They also know the money's escrowed at settlement. They know that they're not going to be in a position where they're going to do some work and have to chase the owner down to get paid. So it's a really big plus for the contractors, the ones that understand it.
Absolutely. And a big part of this is the fact that, the contractors are on a draw. So if, you say, for instance, that we close the renovation loan, we move forward with the work. And by the way, when we close it, the agent gets paid on closing, renovation gets taken care of, and then the contractor is able to get the draws through the process of the renovation. So what do you see time frame wise? What are you seeing as far as how that's work? Obviously, it's going to depend on the complexity of the job, but overall, do you manage that system? Do you stay on top of it, make sure that you're involved with the buyers and the contractor all the way through the finish?
I can if need be, but the contractors I work with are so used to the process at this point. And the buyers are, I educate the buyers on how it's going to work after closing. So as a realtor, I don't have to have a tremendous amount of involvement at that point. Pretty cut and dried, and it's like you said, it's laid out in draws. So it's, there's a review of the work that's done before the money is issued to the contractor. Then you go into the next phase of the work to be done, and then the review of the work is done, and then you go into phase 3. So it's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. So as a real estate agent, I don't have to occupy a tremendous amount of my time after the fact.
But I want to make the point is that we get paid when the thing closes, whether it's done or not.
Right. Yeah,
I think
that's a key piece, not only for the buyer but for the contractor. The closing happens, the realtors get paid, the money's escrowed at closing. The contractors know they have to do the first third of the work, for example, and after that's done, the review of their work will be done and they'll get paid the first third. Then they'll go and do the second third of the work, et cetera, et cetera. It's very systematic and cut and dried. So it works well for everybody, for the buyer, for the contractor, for the realtor. So it's a great formula.
I love it. This is such a great idea. One of the people that are with us today have asked, how do you find these homes? I mean, how do you go out there and find the foreclosures? How do you find the vacant homes? How do you find those bank owns, those REOs, so to speak? Where are they?
Well, there's multiple ways of finding them. You can go to the HUD list, which is HUDhomestore.com. Go to HUDhomestore.com, click on the state that you're interested in. The HUD list will come up with all the available HUD foreclosed properties that way. That's one way to search HUD. For Fannie Mae foreclosures, you can go to homepath.com, and that will give you and you can search your area, your county, your state for the available Fannie Mae foreclosures. If you want to do online auction type stuff to represent a buyer, we haven't really touched on that yet, but you can go to hubzoo.com, auction.com, hudsonandmarshall.com, and you can capture the lists of available properties. Now, when you buy an online auction, there's a little more cash up front for the buyer, but those properties generally need repairs as well, so they're a natural for a renovation loan as well.
Got it. Well, now that you brought it up, let's talk about it. Auction's a big part. It's not for the faint of heart, but it's somebody that they're going to need you and your expertise to go through that. So let's talk about it.
Sure. Well, if it's an online auction property, I have access to show the property before the auction, just like I would any normal property. We talk to the buyers about the fact that it'll be a live bidding process. We can bring the contractor out before the bidding starts to get the estimates of how much work it's going to be done. Typically, you advise the buyer to set a preset spending limit, including the contractor piece, and then you participate in an online auction. And if you're the high bidder, Depending if the bid is high enough, you're granted the contract at that point, and you generally go to closing in about 45 days. So it's not totally different than a private seller, private buyer transaction, but it opens the doors for below market purchases, and it opens the doors for the objection that the buyer has that might be, sure, if I buy this online auction, how do I know, what I'm running into as far as repairs needed? Well, the reno piece satisfies that typically.
Right. And then you can show the property prior to the auction, right?
You show it prior to the auction, you bring the contractor in prior to the auction. The contract is still contingent on home inspection. So you're not going to be in trouble as a buyer if you find some major problem that you didn't anticipate. But you go into it with peace of mind as a buyer that, hey, I've got this renovation loan in place. Whatever comes my way, I can add the cost of those repairs into the loan. So it takes away some of the fear of proceeding with an online auction.
And I think there's also a misnomer on an online auction that the payment is due on the day the auction is completed, and that is not the case. It's a regular transaction, right?
It's a regular transaction. The earnest money deposit requirement is posted up front, so you know that ahead of time. Depending on what online auction company you're working with, there may be an additional fee up front, but by and large, the money's due at settlement just like it would be through any other transaction.
That's great. That's awesome. Because I think a lot of times people think of the auction, they think of, oh my gosh, it's sold and now I have to actually pay for it right then and there. So that's a really good approach. You mentioned HomePath. You mentioned 203K. The difference between those programs, one's a FHA program, one's a Fannie program. There are some nuances with both of those, but are you seeing any, are you being able to adapt whatever you need to do in your marketplace and finding the right loan program that offers whatever happens for those buyers?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about HUD foreclosures. If you do the FHA 203K, you get the reduced $100 down on the HUD foreclosure. If it's any other type of foreclosure, then you customize it to the buyer's needs. Typically, an FHA 203K renovation loan has more lenient income to debt ratios. So the qualification piece is slightly easier because of the debt income ratio part of it. Other than that, the Fannie is a slightly lower down payment at 3%, as long as the ratios are in line. So you tailor it to whatever makes the most sense for the buyer for that particular property. But they're very similar, FHA 203 in the Fannie Mae Reno program, not a whole lot different.
That's right. And the qualification for the FHA is, there's some nuances there. What I would recommend is that, that you find a great renovation partner. So, David, let's talk about that. I mean, you've obviously found a great renovation partner, and you've been able to together figure out how to help your clients. So, how do you work? What do you expect out of your partner with renovation loans? How do you guys work together?
So, Sherry Cash is my lender at rate.com. She's the guru. I mean, she teaches the class to other lenders that want to learn about renovation loans. So, I'm working with the best loan officer to start with, which is a huge benefit. On top of that, knowing how it's going to work before you get it under contract is a key piece to it. So you use the same contractors over and over again. And as you pointed out, once the contractor is registered with the lender, you use the same contractor each time. So between having the best lender and having good contractors that understand the formula, it just becomes a cookie cutter process from that point on. Each property is slightly different with the repairs needed, but other than that, it's a pretty straightforward process.
Got it. Let's talk about the inspection part. You brought that up briefly, but I want to make sure that everybody understands is that when you're buying a property that needs some work, the inspection is really important. So how do you handle that? When do you order it? What's the procedure for getting the inspection done?
Well, first of all, it's like any other contract. The contract's contingent on home inspection. So some people have fear about if I buy a fixer-upper home or if I buy an online auction home, what if it's a money pit? What if there's some unforeseen major cost? These contracts are all contingent on home inspection. So if you do run into a major problem that you don't anticipate, which is very, very rare, But if it does happen, you're not locked into the contract, so you don't lose anything. So that part is a critical piece to overcome any fear that a buyer might have with proceeding with a purchase on a reno. So you don't have to worry about the big problems. As far as the inspection goes, you can bring in your own home inspectors like you would on any other transaction. So the people you're comfortable with are the same people that can do the home inspection. If you get into a full-scale major renovation that most people don't get into, but if you want to borrow $100,000 and the property makes sense, the ARV, after repaired value, will accommodate it from an appraisal standpoint, then it's a little bit more cumbersome in that you have to have an FHA inspector brought in, a designated FHA inspector, somebody that would be different than your normal home inspector.
Right.
Doesn't make it an overwhelming process, doesn't cause any difficulty. It's just that they will tell you what has to be done at a minimum to bring it up to code according to FHA or HUD standards. So they speak on behalf of HUD at that point, telling you what you got to do it as a minimum. Then what your contractor list will provide is the extra repairs that might be wished for on top of what's required, and that plan has to be reviewed and approved. So it's just a little bit, one extra step in the process. But again, regarding inspections, you use your own inspector like you always would any other time. If you get into a major renovation because it makes sense to do that, then HUD appoints a FHA inspector to join the team at that point. Not a problem, no more difficult than you would do it any other way.
And then you're just assuring the buyer that we're going to make sure that they're protected, and that's one of the things I love about that is that we're going to make sure that we take care of every aspect, and you're going to feel comfortable in your new home, which by the way was going to be greatly improved because of all the renovations we're going to do. So I think that's really important.
It's going to be greatly improved, and at the same time, in most cases, you're going to be looking at a house that's all fixed up. And the final loan against the property is a lot less than it would be if you bought the home from somebody else that was already fixed up. So at the end of the day, you're buying your home and you're buying it considerably below market value, which is a big part of it.
Now, one of the things that's important to note, I think, and let me ask you how you handle this. So, my wife and I really just recently did some renovations on our home, and when we got into it, we realized we were way over our head. And we had to bring in a designer because we were trying to figure out how to do this and how to, working with a contractor. And I know you have great contractors, but do you ever expand in to bring in designers or outside vendors or anything involved in that process?
I have had people that knew architects and people like that, and they wanted to bring them in as well for an extra level of comfort. And that's fine. If they want to do that, it's perfectly fine to do that. They don't necessarily, it's a rarity to need to do that, however, because they generally have an idea what they'd like to get accomplished. The contractors are good contractors. They can lay it out for them. We can go to other houses that already have those type of improvements in place, and we can take a look at those before the job gets started. It's whatever you want to do. Some people feel more comfortable with bringing other experts in along with it. The program allows that. It's not a problem.
I love it. And I also want to go back to something that you said. You've mentioned 45 days a couple of times. Sometimes, obviously the repairs are going to take a lot longer in some cases than that. So, how do you handle the buyers that, find this home and then, you go through the process, you get it closed in 45 days, the construction starts, it might take a few months. How do you walk the buyers through the process? How do you explain it to them? What's your sit down coaching with those buyers as you start to approach going through the process?
Well, the buyers have options. I find that some buyers want to move in right after closing and let the contractor piece be done around them, let the work be done while they're living there. Other buyers will decide to stay where they are and have the contractors lined up to get the work done and started immediately at closing and streamline the coordination of the different contractors. Most of the minor jobs can be done in less than 30 days. So let's take an example. Let's say we go to closing in the month of November. They take ownership at the day of closing in the month of November. They don't have a mortgage payment due in December. Their first mortgage payment would start January 1st. If they want to stay where they are and rent another month, for example, they're not paying a rent payment and a mortgage payment. Majority of these are the contractor piece can be done in less than 30 days. Getting back to what we were talking about, bringing an architect in or for a bigger job, the cost of the architect fee can also be added to the loan. That's another important piece of it.
That is true.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I got a question that came in, and this is going to be, you're going to have to really put your thinking cap on this one. So how does renovation financing actually create more inventory?
As far as the listing side goes?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you take a listing, you're given advice typically as a realtor to the seller as to what you suggest the seller do to make the house more marketable. If you have a renovation loan in your back pocket, then at that point, if you want to have the seller refinance through a renovation process, they can get all the work done ahead of time to try to maximize the sale price. So they can refi from their existing loan into a renovation loan, roll the cost of the repairs in, make the house stellar, and then at that point they put it on the market for top dollar. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to use the reno on the buyer side and just alert the buyer of what can be done to the house and give them a projection of what the final loan amount will be, what the monthly payment will be, what the cash to close will be if they purchase this listing and then do the work. And we can offer or lend our contractors to the buyer as well. So we can market it from a listing standpoint of here's some suggestions of what you might want to do. Here's our contractor. They've already given an estimate. Here's the estimate. Go ahead and use this particular loan so that you can roll the cost in without having to reach in your pocket to fix the house up.
Would you agree that if I have a listing that really needs a lot of work, and I might talk to the seller about, look, sell it for what you can get for it now, and then that way it might be more marketable by telling the prospective buyer that they can actually do the improvements and make the house the way they want it? Would that be an approach that you would use?
Yeah, absolutely. That's another way to do it. Absolutely.
Got it.
All right, let's go back to your marketing. I know that we talked about old school, and your son's helping you use some of the technology. How do you market yourself? What are you doing to get your word out there? What's your strategy to talk with the people that you're serving, and how you get your approach to business out there?
Well, one thing I touched on is bandit signs. You find a property that needs work, you put on the sign, new this, new that, new the other thing, new kitchen, new bathrooms. You can calculate how much the cost of the renovation is going to be, add it to the purchase price. And then when you market the property, even though the work hasn't been done yet, I show it to a prospective buyer. Here's the contractor list of what's going to be done. And you can market that property oftentimes in a lower purchase price, a lower combined ARV loan amount than you would for the neighboring houses on the same street. So if you can market a property because it needs a lot of work with that renovation loan, then you're in a position where ultimately the final sale price or final loan amount is a lot lower than the neighboring properties. And it's an easy way to market a particular property.
Got it. Hey, I just had a question come in the questions box, and it really has sparked my brain. We've had a lot of really crappy weather across the country, hurricanes, a lot of tornadoes. We've got some damage. Now, FHA has a 203H loan, which is to rehab properties that were affected by hurricanes. Thank goodness you haven't dealt with hurricanes in your area, but I know you've had some flooding and things. Are you using the renovation approach to help with any weather-related damaged homes?
Yeah, we've done that many times where the house flooded due to heavy rains. Last week we got 5 inches of rain in an hour. So we had multiple roads that were underwater here in our area. So in our area, we have an extremely high water table to start with. So we don't have a lot of basements in general here, but the basements we do have invariably flood if we get that much rain that quickly. So, whether the seller wants to use the renovation loan to handle his problem by refinancing into it, or you come across a vacant property that's flooded basement, that's just another aspect of, you can do anything with the renovation loan, basically. So if it means pumping out the basement, having a professional waterproofer come in and do a professional waterproofing treatment, all that can be handled through the renovation loan.
Got it. Also, I wanted to bring up and remind everybody is that since the 203K loan is an FHA loan, you have to stay within the county loan limits, right? The home path loan, however, being a conventional, you can get above that. Have you seen much activity renovation on the jumbo arena, David?
I've seen some of it, but by and large, the majority of it is more conducive to the first time, second time buyers. So I don't typically personally run into a lot of jumbo loans. It certainly can be done, and it's certainly a valuable tool, but me personally, I haven't done as much of that.
Got it. But it is out there. I just want you guys to know that. Yep. All right. And thank you, Pam Keller, for reminding me the 203H program can only be used if the house is completely gone. Okay, so the 203K, if there's some left, you have to use what you have there, and then you can use the 203K. But you know what? I never thought about the flooded basement, David. That's a great idea because here in Chicago, we have a lot of basements, and we've had some pretty significant weather over the summer where we had a lot of flooding. You can actually completely re-renovate your basement using a 203K loan. So that's a great approach. Forgot totally about that. Yep. Hey, as we start to wrap up here, and I know we're getting close on time already. Man, my gosh, time flies when you're having fun. My favorite two words on a listing are "as is." Those to me are, oh my gosh, here we go. I'm jumping all over that. How do you approach the "as is" listing?
I look for as is. I look for mold. I look for renovation needed. I look for those. I do keyword searches for those. Those typically, keep in mind, I represent buyers 90% of the time. So I'm searching for those kind of keywords to find below market properties. And then when the below market property appears, we can use the renovation loans to make them nice, but provide the buyer the best opportunity to get it below market purchase price.
All right. And with your 170 buyers in your pipeline right now, what's your strategy with them? Are you constantly looking for those opportunities, those as is, those fixer uppers, those renovation needed? Are you constantly looking for those matches?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, each buyer has their own set of goals. Some people are, of course, are looking for move-in condition, and if that's what they're looking for, fine. But there are a great number of them that when they understand there's a possibility out there to buy something way below market, and they then are made aware of the renovation process, it all comes together for them. And I find that most people, when presented with that opportunity, would love to be able to customize the house by using the renovation, especially if they can buy it considerably below market and accomplish all of that and end up with a final loan that's way below market value. So I offer it as one of my options to all the buyers when I originally put them in the pipeline. Hey, if the house needs some work, are you okay with that? If you can take the cost of the repairs and add it to the loan, does that make sense? And, probably 70 or 80% of them would love to entertain that,
Right.
Some people just straight move in quick, be done with it. And if that's fine, hey, we'll help them in a different way. But I find the majority of the buyers are open to the renovation process.
Yeah, so you mentioned Sherry being your renovation partner, and I think it's important. At what point do you bring Sherry in? How does she help make sure that your buyers are in a position to do what they need to do? How does your lending partner fit into the process?
Well, what I do is when I first make the original meeting with the buyer or the original phone contact with the buyer, I put them in touch with Sherry right away. So she'll then get to do the normal pre-approval process, looking at their credit, looking at their income to debt ratios, et cetera. But if on top of that, will anticipate a ballpark home improvement budget to be added. So she'll pre-qualify them in the situation that maybe they want to add 20 or 30,000 of renovations. So all that is done up front. Before I even show the house, typically, I know how much they'll qualify for on a straight purchase price. I'll know how much they'll qualify for if they find a house that needs 20 or 30,000 in repairs. The pre-approvals can be generated, and I know ahead of time before I take the first step with the buyer. My process is I'm not going to show a buyer a home under any conditions unless I know they're pre-approved, but not only for the purchase price, but purchase price plus renovation. So we cover all that on the front end before we even start looking at homes.
Got it. And when you, obviously being on the buy side representing those buyers, do you find that the listing agents sometimes are a little hesitant when you talk about the renovation approach to when you're going to make an offer on that property?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, today I'm dealing with a listing agent who's not real knowledgeable about renovation process. He's selling a 4-unit apartment building to one of my buyers, and the buyer originally asked for a repair credit. He got nervous because he didn't know if the repair credit would solve the problem with the building, and he was afraid we'd get halfway into the process and the loan would blow up because there'd be unanticipated costs. So what we just did is we switched the loan financing over to renovation financing. And then I'm going back to Mr. Listing Agent and say, look, there's no repair credit being requested from the seller. Whatever the cost of the repairs are will be added to the buyer's loan. The seller has no risk. The seller has no liability. Let's proceed ahead. I'm just working with that one.
Yeah, and you can do a rental on a 4-unit property, so that's amazing. That's a great strategy.
Yep. And on a 4-unit property, if the buyer chooses to live in 1 unit, you can count the rents from the other 3 in qualifying for the mortgage.
I love it. This is such a great approach. And what the biggest message I want you guys to hear, and one of the reasons that we brought David in here is because he is obviously making a great living out of being innovative in a marketplace. He's being different in his market. And, you know, we have to look for every opportunity, especially as we're going into that slower selling season. So what I'm recommending that you do is that you think a little bit outside of your box and incorporate some of the ideas that David has given you today about how you might be able to look for those different types of opportunities. Renovation lending has always been, oh my gosh, no way, I'm never going to do that. It's way too complicated. It's not. But I will also tell you this, it's not as long as you have a Sherry, as long as you have somebody that you can trust that's in the renovation lending business. Now, we have experts here at Guaranteed Rate. Sherry's one of them. We have a whole group that have been doing this for a long, long time. The thing about it is that you've got to find somebody that you can partner with. So us partnering with David, who's out there bringing in the business, he has the buyers, he has the opportunities. The partnership is perfect because bringing Sherry in from the beginning, talking about the things that we need to do to position that buyer to be in line with not only buying the home as is, but to David's point, buying the loan in case you wanted to do some renovations to it. So I think that's a great strategy. And before we wrap up here, David, I always ask agents about this. Tell me about what the future looks like. Tell me about your forecast for the market. What do you see for the next 6 months, the next year? Where do you see things going?
Well, the economy is actually absolutely booming. You know, with the unemployment being at low rates, with the stock market going through the roof, everything's looking promising as far as I can see. Unemployment rates being so low, and I do a lot of work with first-time buyers. What I'm finding is it's a constant flow of new buyers coming into the market, much better than I saw 5 or 6 years ago when things were very stagnant. So I think it's a very promising outlook for the future, in my opinion. And just having the tools and having the right people in your corner are key to doing a consistent amount of business.
Right. And one of the last things I'll wrap up with here is the fact that I just read a really interesting article about the millennials. Okay. So you think about millennials who are very technologically driven. But what the research has shown is that millennials are awesome. They want to start the process with using technology. But as they get down the road a little bit, they want somebody to come in and help them. And that's where agents like you come in. They want somebody to walk them through the process. They want somebody to actually take them into the home. You can't do that on your phone, right? You can apply for a mortgage and you can search for homes and you can do all of those things on your phone, but you can't actually go see the house. But more importantly, they don't have the vision that you have. David, when you take people in to show them a home and you talk about the possibilities, can you see the differences and how they brighten up?
Absolutely, definitely. Have you ever seen the counters? Are you familiar with gray paint on the walls with bright white trim? Oh yeah, I love that. I see that all the time. You can do that with this house very easily, you know? So it's exactly what you said. Having that background and knowing what the finished product's going to look like before it starts is a crucial piece of it.
Yeah. So technology's coming. In fact, it's here. but it's never going to replace us. And that's what's pretty cool about it. Okay, so David Willman, thank you so much for being a great part of our Gateless Live session today. You're an amazing individual, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Hey, thanks for joining everybody. We appreciate your partnership. We appreciate the fact that you have come to Gateless.com and enjoyed these Gateless Live webinars. We hope they're helpful for you. But more importantly, we hope that you explore our entire website and find all the things that can help you really expand your business and get better at what you do. So on behalf of all of us here at Guaranteed Rate, thanks for joining us. Remember, Gateless.com.